Attorney Tanya Miller and Attorney Gerald Griggs, and we are outside the residence where Jimmy Atchison was shot and killed by police or FBI. We know that both were involved in this story. Can you tell me, how did you get involved in representing Mr. Atchison? Yes.
I was contacted by the family probably 2 or 3 days after Jimmy was killed, and they were looking for, at that point, answers. They had been getting the runaround from law enforcement. It wasn't clear what agency was investigating, who was in charge. It wasn't clear exactly how their son died. They didn't know if he had been shot once or shot multiple times, if he had been beaten to death. They were just getting a bunch of misinformation, and they just wanted help. They wanted help to navigate the process, to make sure that, someone was held accountable to give them answers about what happened. And so that's what they asked me to do, and that's what I agreed to do. And so from that point, we assembled a team of people together. I reached out to Gerald fairly soon after being contacted by the family to seek his help, and just, getting answers and getting the word out about what happened. We also got our investigator on board and immediately started trying to interview witnesses to just try to get a sense of what was going on. And so that's what led us here today. We came to the scene to try to get answers about what happened to Jimmy, and we've learned a lot since we've been here today. We have learned that without question, Jimmy was unarmed. And there can't be any real debate about him being unarmed because there was a foot chase that was fairly extensive, and his arms were visible to everybody who was there. So he had no weapon. He had sought refuge inside of an apartment with an individual who he had known for a long time, since childhood. That individual reports that he was terrified. He was in fear for his life and was just afraid he was about to be killed. He, at that point, hid in a closet and was hiding in a closet. It's not entirely clear how law enforcement got into the apartment, but they did get into that apartment where he was hiding shortly after that. And they came in with weapons drawn. They came upon him in a closet, and they shot him right then and there in the closet where he was found.
I learned during the course of my investigation that he was also an aspiring rapper. Were you aware of that?
We learned that from the family.
Okay.
We learned that he was an aspiring rapper. He loved music, and he was hoping to build a career for himself in the music industry. It was very important to him to be able to take care of his 2 children. He expressed that. He thought music was a way out for him. And so that was his dream, so to speak, to be a rapper. Why
was the FBI involved? I know you're a former federal prosecutor. Did you know initially when you took the case that the FBI was involved?
I did. I got some sort of initial information from the family. It wasn't clear at first why the FBI was involved, but it became pretty clear why they were involved after some initial investigation. Apparently, the FBI was working in conjunction with the Atlanta Police Department in a task force, or on a task force, the FBI Fugitive Task Force. And it's basically a task force of federal agents and state officers, law enforcement, who work together to serve warrants, arrest warrants. That's it. It's not all that complicated what they get funding to do, but they get funding in essence to go out and serve arrest warrants for people. Now, these are people who haven't been indicted yet. Typically, they have not had a lawyer yet. They haven't seen a police report. They are still presumed innocent. At that point, they are serving, for the most part, arrest warrants, and that's what they were doing on the day that Jimmy was killed. It's our understanding that they had an arrest warrant for him based on an accusation that someone made against him. Our information is that accusation is not well-founded, but we know that there was an accusation at least made by a female acquaintance, something involving a cell phone. In any event, we don't know all the details of that. There is some dispute about whether there was a weapon involved in that or not. In any event, what we do know is on the day he was killed, there was no weapon. He had no weapon. He was unarmed. He was in a closet. He had nowhere to go. There was nothing dangerous within his reach. And he was shot in the face by the police. Now, what their excuse for that is, we are still waiting for answers in that regard. Attorney
Griggs, you've been involved in a lot of high-profile police shootings of unarmed people of color. Recently, you were a part of a presser bringing attention to this, and it involved rap mogul Jermaine Dupri. Why is it so important that people not only focus on this particular case, but more so the overall situation as it involved police in Atlanta on the heels of the Super Bowl coming to Atlanta?
There's a pervasive climate in Atlanta that has given rise to numerous police-involved shootings, and this is just the latest one. And I think that it must be underscored to our entertainers that this is a pervasive problem. You know, we've had a sit-down conversation with Mr. Dupri and other Atlanta entertainers who seem to be oblivious to the problem that's been highlighted by many families, many activists, and many attorneys. And so this case underscores the very essence of the problem. We're on the eve of the Super Bowl, and Atlanta police, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, seem to have summarily executed one of our citizens. So I'm joining this team to get to the bottom of what happened in this case and to bring light and to elevate the message not only to the city and not only to the state but to the world that there's a problem here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we need to address it.
Absolutely. Last question this is for Mr. Christopher Mungin. Christopher, how are you?
How's it going?
Good. So I initially saw you live. Okay. You actually going into the apartment. You've been a part of 17th Street protests, Waffle House protests.
Correct.
And this one here is, just looking at the visual, is awful, because most time people don't get an opportunity to see this.
Right.
What went through your mind when you heard about this?
Instantly, it was like, again, another one. And you know, because I continuously hear that in Atlanta we don't have this problem. It gets swept under the rug. So day in and day out we have this problem. So it definitely hit home. And I got here as soon as, like, the minute I got the call, I dropped what I was doing instantly, because we as the people need to hear it and see what's going on, and it needs to stop being sugar-coated. It's time to show the raw, like show what's going on.
What do you plan on having any protests or anything? It's just not just this situation, but anything leading up to the Super Bowl, which is a week away.
Stay tuned.